situate, I'm really glad to see everyone in the room. I'm Tammy Luu. I'm an organizer with the Labor Community Strategy Center and the Bus Riders Union. Welcome to the workshop, Transformative Organizing Theory. Conscious organizers seek to build anti-racist, anti-imperialist politics rooted in working class communities of color. As you can see, we've got an amazing panel for you guys.
Yes, we do.
Some of my favorite organizers are sitting on this panel. Every single one of them has at least 10 years in the movement, rooted in grassroots organizing with working class communities of color. Yes. You got Maina, the Director of Social Justice Leadership in New York City. Everybody, Netha. You got Ai-jen Pu, Director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance and the Domestic Workers United that just won their Domestic Workers Bill of Rights as of yesterday. This is Patrisse Cullors. She is an organizer with the Labor Community Strategy Center and helping with the Community Rights Project taking on the school to prison pipeline. Patrisse Cullors. And that's Eric, who I just introduced. So that's Eric, you guys. Then you have Steve Williams, the Director of People Organized to Win Employment Rights in San Francisco, California. And there's my girl over there, Cindy Weisner, with Grassroots Global Justice Alliance. Tell me that's not an amazing panel. All right, so Eric, why don't you kick it off?
Well, first of all, I'm very gratified that everybody is here. The blurb was kind of short. It said anti-racist, anti-imperialist organizing. Maybe it said in communities of color. And to get this number of people who just sort of got it and said this is where I want to be is a good reflection about where the movement is. And this is going to be an effort to move the movement forward. I've been organizing with the Congress of Racial Equality, Students for Democratic Society, worked with the Black Panther Party, was in SDS, was in Weatherman, went to prison for political issues, worked 10 years on an automobile assembly line, and then worked 20 years as director of the Strategy Center. And I've had a lot of thoughts, but they've mainly been in the verbal tradition. I've never written them down, and I'm a writer. So I've written books, but I've never written about organizing. And so this is an effort to really start codifying some very basic things that we might agree on and that we could all use, that we could all say we agree with it, perhaps, these 7 components. We could go back, and we're going to ask you to get a lot of books, and to bring them back to your group. And it's really fast read, and it could be a really good read for your whole organization to ask yourselves, where are you? I'm part of a writing collective. I work with my wife, Leanne Hurst-Mann.
Woo! So I'm going to ask each speaker to stand because people are having a hard time projecting,
Okay.
or so the back can hear you.
And Daniel Kim.
Daniel.
So that's, oh yeah, one other thing. I wanted to thank Jaron Brown and Ai-jen Pu for being my sort of national support committee. And that slogan is finish the damn book already. So, okay, the first thing about there's a short introduction about the history of transformative organizing from the indigenous peoples to the present. The tradition we're part of and need to advance versus the Alinsky pragmatic type of organizing. So it is a challenge to say that if you look at the Iroquois nations, if you look at the IWW, if you look at the Communist Party, if you look at the Back to Africa movement, if you look at the Niagara movement, if you look at SNCC, CORE, SDS, Black Panthers, Red Guards, Third World Women's Alliance, there's a tradition of an anti-racist, anti-patrimony, anti-imperialist politics. And those kind of politics have sort of been being pushed down in this period in history. A lot of people are saying don't use the word imperialism, it turns other people off, but George Bush says it's imperialism and we're winning. You know, so they like the term, but we're not supposed to use the term. So the first thing is it's trying to reassert a historical trend that we're in, that we're part of those groups. And that's the first point of the book. The second is that transformative organizing begins by a challenge to the US empire. We live in a country that is running 2 declared wars at the same time, Iraq and Afghanistan, that is causing misery for basically people all over the world, except in Venezuela, Cuba, and other places where they've been successfully able to resist imperialism. When they talk about getting rid of poverty and people who have only $2 a day, that's based on the United States imperialism imposing its free market economy on the world so that people can't even have water in their own countries. So when I got involved in the movement, it was for civil rights and against the war. And very quickly, civil rights started calling itself black liberation. And the against the war was Vietnamese liberation. So we were part of an anti-racist, anti-imperialist united front, and we all became radicalized. And I think that's what we want to do today, is bring this into low-income communities of color, because we believe that these advanced ideas are not imposing our agenda on somebody. It means that we're somebody, that we have views, we're part of the community is divided, we'll bring those ideas in, and the community will decide if they want them. They're free agents, but it makes no sense to go in and say, I have no agenda, when you do have an agenda. So we get back to that. Because all the, you know, because I always wonder, how come the people who always say they have no agenda always end up not dealing with LGBTQ issues? They never deal with the war. They never deal with racism. They're very close to the Democratic Party. They fight for very little reforms. They're very close to the AFL-CIO bureaucracy, the Catholic Church hierarchy. So they have an agenda. They should just say that's my agenda. And we're very close to trade unions who are in struggle. We're interested in liberation theologists. We're interested in, of course, rank and file priests and ministers and rabbis. It's not like we don't deal with the church. But we have priests who don't tell us to not talk about abortion rights, as an example. So the first thing is that Transformative is about anti-imperialist politics. The second thing, which I was getting to, is a transformative organizer is a revolutionary educator. There's nothing to be ashamed of that you have something to teach. It's always been counterposed that you have something to learn. Of course you have something to learn. You probably have more to learn than what you have to teach. But you don't go in with nothing. Otherwise, why are you there? You don't knock on somebody's door and say, hi, I'm here to learn. Learn what? I don't want to join your group. What the hell is your group trying to do? I want to listen to the community. Well, all right, I want to go beat up my wife and I'll be back in a couple of... We don't want to listen to that person. We want to listen to the battered woman. We want to listen to the immigrant who's leading a struggle in our own community. We want to listen to somebody who came from El Salvador and was already in the communist socialist movement. We want to listen to the veterans of the Black Panther Party who do exist today. We want to find some of the young queer people who are also behind that door, who can say, I've been looking for you. As we say, you're the people we've been looking for. So it's a much more bold politics. Third, transformative organizing focus on society's most oppressed and exploited classes. It's a strategic alliance. We believe eventually that the vast majority of people in the United States can be won to an anti-racist, anti-imperialist politics. But that's going to be very, very hard, and you have to start somewhere. We start with the intersection of the Black and Latino community as a strategic alliance that's central to building a broader multiracial left. And within that, the role of the Black and Latino working class, including defining the working class as women in the home, bus riders, prisoners, people on AFDC, yes, factory workers, people at the point of production, But there are many ways to organize the working class besides just as workers, because they're working class every minute of their day. So we have a bus riders union, we have community rights trying to get kids out of the pre-prison system. Those people are just as working class as a factory worker. We then believe that all the people of color, indigenous, Asia Pacific Islander, create this bloc. Then we think anti-racist whites are very important and should not be written off. There's a whole history of them. There's a history of students being very important to this strategy. There's a history of middle-class people of color in particular, and middle-class professionals. But if we don't have a base in the Black and Latino community, we can't branch out. You got to have a strategy, and that's at least my strategy. Transformative organizers produced by transformative organizations. I think all the people here are in transformative organizations. You can't just join a grassroots group that doesn't have a lot of politics and think you're going to transform the community. All the groups that I've mentioned have had a very developed political agenda. So what makes them transformative organizations? First of all, their social composition. We don't believe that majority white organizations can be transformative organizations at this point in history. They can be helpful to transformative organizations, but we think it's got to be multiracial or all of one race, led by oppressed nationality people. But it's also people that have a tradition. A transformative organization has a tradition of building leadership, creating a sense of family, creating a sense as Esperanza Martinez was saying to me, there's a lot of ways to sustain yourself, but the work must nurture you. You cannot just go to retreats, which I do, for meditation. I go to yoga. I go to the gym. I go to psychiatrists. Just like Ron Artest. But none of them can save me from loving my own work or not loving my own work. And I think it's a true joy to be an organizer and work with the people. Transformative organizing is demonstrated in the heat of battle. I remember being at the Washington, the demonstration against the war, and they put about 60 of us in a police car, stacked on top of each other, and left us in the Washington, D.C. heat. We all panicked. We thought we couldn't breathe. And imagine we started having like a riot inside the police car because we couldn't move, inside this van. Finally, we organized ourselves just how to breathe, how not to panic, that there was enough oxygen, but we had to almost divide up the oxygen in the room in a strategic manner and be sisters and brothers. And when we finally got out 4 hours later, we had bonded through an amazing experience. But you need to know that one of the things about transformative organizing, Tom Goldtooth, I was talking to him yesterday, he said, remember, organizing in the indigenous community is not for the faint of heart. You get beat up. They are armed. And we have to protect ourselves. I think in this country right now, left organizing is not going to be for the faint of heart, as they're now making even speech in support of so-called terrorist organizations illegal. You know, we are all in grave danger of being locked up. And many of our people are being locked up. So it's a tough transition that if you join, you just can't have anti-imperialist politics from an academic perch. It means getting involved in the working class, and if we have a solid base in the working class of color, we can win those politics. 6, transformative organizing transforms the organizer. There's a lot of things to talk about, but for me the biggest issue is the role of self-criticism. Organizing is a mirror to yourself. You go out and speak to 50 people, 30 will shine you on, but 20 will give you some very interesting information if you want it, including voting with their feet. Oh yeah, I'm gonna come, yeah, great, yeah, sounds great, yeah, count me in. They don't show up. Well, what did that say? As I always say, the best way to say no on a bus is yes, right? So but they don't show up. Then people tell you criticisms of your organizations, criticism of your own behavior. It's very hard to look in the mirror, but between dealing with the police, dealing with your own weaknesses, and trying to transform yourself, you become a transformative organizer. And finally, transformative organizing requires a transformative program. I'm just going to read you stuff quick. You know, when you're involved in a movement, they always say, well, what do you people want? When you're not, you know, when you go to the police station or you go to the university. So here are some things we want that we think are systematic with transformative organizing. Free the U.S. 2 million prisoners. U.S. out of Afghanistan and Iraq now, bring the troops home. We want the social welfare state, not the police state. We want 100,000 more buses, new hospitals, mental health clinics and public schools, and 100,000 less police. Free, safe, and legal abortion with public support and financing, and minors having the right to abortion without parental consent. Reparations for the transatlantic slave trade to the peoples of Africa, the African diaspora, and black people in the U.S. Unconditional amnesty and option of citizenship for 12 million immigrants, open the U.S. borders. Full democratic rights and equality for LGBTQ people. Shut down the 810 U.S. bases of military occupation. Stop the traffic of women and girls, which is very related to those 810 bases of occupation. Reverse global warming. Stop offshore drilling. Restrict the oil. Adopt the Bolivian proposal for the Kyoto Treaty that will reduce greenhouse gases to 50% below 1990 levels by 2017. That's Evo Morales, not Barack Obama. Self-determination and sovereignty for the Palestinian people. Jobs or income now for the 32 million unemployed. Remove all CIA operatives from Venezuela and other third world countries. And stop the embargo on Cuba. And finally, end the war on drugs, the war on crime, the war on gangs, and the war on terror. What we're going to talk about today is, do you feel comfortable taking that platform out to the people that you're trying to organize? At the Strategy Center, we do. We talk to our members like I talked to you today. So I'm really honored to be on the platform, and I'm really looking forward to the response.
So I'm sending around a sign-in sheet, so if it goes past you, please sign. So now I've asked each of the respondents, and there's 5 of them, to take 8 minutes and talk about how the 7 components relate to their own work, how you think they impact the movement, what reflections do you have for Eric, and what reflections do you have for the audience, right? So the first one I'm going to ask to speak is Steve Williams. And if you guys haven't seen on Organizing Upgrade, he just wrote a new article, Name It and Claim It, 10 Principles for 21st Century Socialism, right? And if you're curious, as Glenn Beck was curious, right? When he heard about there's a social forum happening in Detroit, it's like, yeah, and there's a workshop called Glenn Beck's Worst Nightmare. Right? So if you're curious, you should check out Steve's workshop. Steve Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're also going to be transforming the political security practice at the social forum as well at the next workshop. I wanted to start off by thanking Eric for writing the pamphlet. I think that all of us know that organizing can be transformative for us individually. But to me, what's most exciting about this is that Eric's beginning to codify what a revolutionary organizing model can actually look like. I imagine that a bunch of you, when you started organizing, were probably very similar to me. Like, I was just hungry. Like, I felt like I had discovered this thing that had just been lost out in the desert for a long time, right? Like I grew up came of age in the 80s, like, during Reagan. Like it was a political wasteland in this country. Not that it's terribly different now, but it was bad then. And when I started organizing, I was hungry and I wanted to figure out how to do this work as well as I possibly could. And so I was reading a bunch of different stuff. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, right? And so I'm reading this stuff and it's relatively well organized. There were numbers in different places and said, do this, don't do that. But the politics seemed crazy. They didn't seem to resonate with why it is that I was doing the work. But the challenge was there was no other consolidated organizing model. And so I found myself trying to do all these intellectual aerobics, sort of taking the mechanics of Saul Alinsky's organizing model and then trying to superimpose an anti-imperialist, anti-racist, anti-sexist politic onto that mechanism. And the challenge is that there are some parts that are incompatible. So it meant then that we as an organization were forced to have to experiment and invent new things, which was fine, but oftentimes we felt like we were experimenting and inventing new things, but not having the benefit of learning from the practice of other transformative or revolutionary organizers. And so to me, I'm excited to be joining the organizing committee that Jaron and Aijen have been on to try to push Eric to finish not just the pamphlet, but also the book of the 21 principles of revolutionary organizing. So to me, the article, the pamphlet, makes a number of important points. And I'm not going to go over all of them, but a couple that stood out for me was first that a transformative organization has confidence that its radical politics have mass impact. And to me, that was really important to hear because I think all too often I have conversations with organizers or members of organizations who sort of have these very progressive left politics independently, but then when they go in and do their organizing, they all of a sudden have this justification as to why it is that they can't talk about socialism